That's where Vanderbilt remains undefeated. Since last time we talked on this podcast, they went out and beat Alabama at home. So now they're 15-0. I want to start you with a simple question. Vanderbilt got that win over Alabama. I moved them into the top 5 of the top 25-1. Are the Commodores at this point, are you willing to describe them as legitimate national championship contenders?
Yes. I think we should have been describing them as national title contenders before this. But yes, going and beating Alabama at home by 6 points, improving to 15-0 on the season, one of only a handful of teams still unbeaten at this juncture in the season. They're absolutely national title contenders. And it's not just that they're 15-0, right? Like 12 of their 15 wins have come by double figures. They're extremely effective on offense. They're 27th in 3-point percentage, shooting 38%, 6th in 2-point shooting percentage. They are very, very efficient on both ends of the floor. I was watching Mark Byington earlier this week on Rothstein's pod, and I thought it was pretty interesting, talking about like how he learned to coach offense. Very, very much like comes off as a aw shucks type guy. And he said, look, I'm just a nerd. Like I pick up things from different coaches. Like he was trying to get Brian Earl, who's William and Mary's head coach, onto a Zoom call to like pick his brain about what he said was like just trying to learn more about basketball. So like, he has the aw shucks personality, but he's like Mark Byington might be that dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might be a situation where, we're talking about a top 10 coach trying to pick William and Mary's brain, like the William and Mary's coach brain. So like, I think what they've done is very impressive. And I also think the underlying metrics are absolutely sustainable. Vanderbilt has been fantastic to start the season. Vanderbilt can win the SEC. Vanderbilt can win the national championship.
They were picked 11th in the preseason SEC poll, as I wrote in the top 25-1 on Thursday morning. I guess that made sense at the time. Like, I don't remember hearing about the SEC preseason poll has been released. Florida's 1, Kentucky's 2, Vanderbilt's 11, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy. I don't know that it registered as crazy with anybody. And then they start through their non-league schedule, and the efficiency numbers are excellent. You even if they're not on your radar, they jump onto it because you can't go to Ken Palm or Bart Torvik or Evan Mee or anywhere else without seeing them. Like oh, okay, I didn't know if they were going to be any good, but this seems to suggest that they might be. And then they just keep winning, and then they just keep winning. And if you were a skeptic, it was always tied to, okay, sure, they're beating people badly, and the computer numbers are impressive, but where are the big signature wins? Because before Wednesday night, they had not even played a team all season that at the time of the game, they had a number next to their name, AP ranking. And so if you wanted to be skeptical, you could. If you want to know why Vandy wasn't lumped into the undefeated 1, 2, 3 conversation with Arizona, Michigan, and Iowa State, that was the reason. Iowa State's got a big win at Purdue. What was Vanderbilt's big win before Wednesday? Fair question, I guess. But then they go out and they play an Alabama team that nobody has any questions about. I think everybody agrees Alabama could win the SEC. Everybody agrees Alabama could go to a Final Four. Everybody agrees Alabama could theoretically win a national championship. Nate Oates is, I think widely regarded as a top 10 coach in the sport at this point. Like, nobody has questions about Alabama. So when you go out and beat them to keep a 0 in the loss column, get your 15th victory, then the really the last thing, or at least among the last things the skeptics had to hold against you, that's now off the board. I guess if somebody wants to say, well, I'll believe it when I see them go on the road and beat a top 20 team on the road, that's fine, but that's probably coming at some point. Like, they look the part, and they now have the big signature win. Who will win the SEC? That probably won't be decided for a while. It might not be clear for several weeks, if not a month. But can Vanderbilt do it? That's not a question anymore, regardless of where they were picked in the preseason. 11th, again, to be clear. That team's not only good enough to win that league, it's good enough to win anything we're playing for, it appears.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy, GP? Like, this is Vanderbilt program that historically is just like, let's just be frank, this is not a SEC juggernaut in basketball, right? Or even really in football. And Byington has, in the interview with Rothstein, said like he had to go and disarm some labels, is how he put it, when recruiting to Vanderbilt, because you think of Vanderbilt synonymous with like excellent education, right? Like if you go to Vanderbilt, you're going to get a fantastic degree, but it's not necessarily like oh man, juggernaut basketball program Vanderbilt, right? And that has been hard for Vanderbilt to overcome. That's been hard for, I think, probably a number of like Stanford or Michigan, like some really proud programs who are really good on the education front, but maybe not the best, in terms of athletics. They've had to overcome that. And, the way in which they've done that, or at least so far, the way in which they've done that, and Byington talked about this in the interview, was like, they have a ton of continuity. They brought back Devin McLaughlin. They brought back Tyler Tanner. They brought back Tyler Nickel. They have continuity. They're trusting in the guys that they brought back, and they've brought in some guys who they feel can fit their system. And they're playing a selfless style basketball that has obviously worked so far. We'll see how the SEC shakes out, but to get a signature win over a very good Alabama team, I think is obviously going to bode well for them, and moving forward, like I think probably projected to win the SEC, and I think maybe in a year in which the SEC is absolutely taking a step back from last year, that to me seems like where we are at right now. A team that was picked 11th in the preseason could legitimately win the SEC.
Yeah, I think the roster continuity, we're seeing that throughout the sport. I mean, the number one team in the country, at least the top 25-1, is Michigan. And they're led by a first-year transfer into the program in Yaxel Lindenborg, but they've also got returning players playing prominent roles on that roster. That's clearly also the case at Arizona. It's also the case at Iowa State. It's also the case at UConn. There's a balance to this stuff, but I think what we're seeing, for the most part, is that it is preferable if you do have some important players that carry over from one year to the next. Can you be good with an entirely new roster? Yes. Can you be good with a first-year player in your program being the face of it? Yes. But I think what we're seeing on average is that it's better when your best players are not in their first year in your program, and that's clearly the case at Vanderbilt. And this is sort of, I think, also an example that you can hold up in this era of college athletics as just a reminder that history doesn't matter as much as it used to matter. Like Norlander and I got into a conversation on Tuesdays, Eye on College Basketball show that we did on CBS Sports Network, about what would be the equivalent in men's basketball to what Curt Cignetti is doing in football at Indiana right now. And, we talked about, perhaps it would be just something like some 62-year-old mid-major coach, former D2 coach, getting the Penn State basketball job and turning it into a 1 seed in the tournament, or the Washington, you could name it. And we were sort of talking about it from different angles. And he brought up Ole Miss. And he was like, well, if you look at the history of Ole Miss, they haven't done much there in the sport of men's basketball. Mm-hmm. And my counterpoint to using Ole Miss as the example of this would be, whatever Ole Miss has accomplished in the past in this sport, it is now set up to do big things in this sport. They've got a respected basketball coach. They've got a beautiful on-campus facility, and they've got real resources like money behind it. Like there's no reason, or no great reason, you can't be great at basketball at Ole Miss right now. There are reasons you can't be great at basketball at other places, but history is almost thrown out the window now.
Yep.
Do you have the right coach? I think it starts there. The right resources to support the coach and give him the ability to roster build. And then do you have the facilities and all the bells and all that stuff? But if you do, I don't really care how many NCAA tournaments you didn't go to in the 80s or the 90s or 20 years ago, or really what you've done. It's a whole new game. And we're seeing it in football. Vanderbilt had a Heisman Trophy candidate and was in the conversation to be in the college football playoff. And you're seeing it in basketball right now. We are having a conversation on a podcast about Vanderbilt perhaps being the best team in the SEC. And by definition, if you're that, you're in the conversation to be the best team in the country. So it looks like Vanderbilt has figured out what everybody at the power conference level should be trying to figure out. How do we get the right coach for our program and then support him in ways that allows him to do what is clearly possible? And in Nashville, Mark Byington is obviously that guy, and it's one of the better stories in the sport.